March was interesting reading month for me because I mix up the genre a lot. So I read science fiction, I read horror, which is kind of new for me. I read space science fiction, then I read, of course, fantasy. So yeah, it was all over the place. So let's get into my Feb and March wrap up. First one in the list is No One Is Watching by Alisa Cole. So the story is about this girl called Sydney, who is born and raised in Brooklyn. There, all of a sudden, she finds that her neighborhood is changing quickly, and her neighbors are moving out or disappearing even without saying a word. And new neighbors are coming in, condos are being built, the parks are being demolished and closed down, etc. So her entire neighborhood, which she grew up in, as a child, is changing and rapidly. And she feels that there is something going on, something very sinister which she cannot figure out. And in her growing frustration, what she does is she decides to have a walking tour of her own of the neighborhood, which normally takes place in the neighborhood. As part of her research, she is being offered the assistance of a white male who just moved in recently nearby. His name is Theo. He seems a very nice guy who is apologetic to the Black Lives Matter cause and all that. I was very interested in finding out how the book and the author handles the whole very touchy-feely subject of gentrification. We know that gentrification and ghettoization of minorities happens all around the world, and it's a very sensitive, at the same time very important topic that needs to be addressed, and I wanted to see how she handles it. I felt that Cole did not achieve what she set out to do, if this is what she wanted to do, that to use the theme of gentrification to craft a very good suspense thriller. Most of the negative characters are borderline cartoonish. You felt that they are like so dark. Things are so made so black and white that it is almost unbelievable. Also, the ending was so bloody and violent, which was, I thought, not necessary. And even if it happens, I don't think somebody would be spared. And the ending, again, it was unbelievable. I gave it a very low rating. I think 2.5. I think I gave it on Goodreads. So yeah, you can read it just to see how the theme of gentrification is used by the author, but do not look for an excellent, great work of fiction. Next up is the first book in the science fiction trilogy, which is the TheIlluminae series, and the first book is called TheIlluminae Series by Amy Hoffman and Jay Kristoff. This book was included in one of my book hauls as well. And if you can remember, I was quite excited to read this book because of its format. Before we get into the format, let me give you a short description of what the book is about. The story is based somewhere in the future. I think it's the year 2575, where there are a lot of space explorations going on. And of course, these space explorations are funded and led by mega corporations. So basically, there are two mega corporations, and they don't like each other, so they fight with each other, and one of the corporation attacks a team of scientists of the other corporation. I hope this is better. There are like a set of two teenagers, a girl and a boy, and they are lovers. They break up, and then they're forced to get into the space shuttle to escape the attack of the enemy corporation. And while they are speeding through space, they realize that they are being chased by the enemy fleet. And now let me get into the format of the book. So the format is basically a collection of files and dossier, maybe hacked from different systems, and it's a collection of interviews and psych evaluations, medical reports, CCTV camera, description of surveillance footage, and also POV of very rogue AI. You have to read this book. I can't just wait to read the second one in the series. In physics and classical mechanics, the three-body problem is the problem of taking the initial positions and velocities of three-point masses and solving for their subsequent motion according to Newton's laws of motion and Newton's law of universal gravitation. Why am I reading this? Because the next book that I read was a science fiction book, which is by far the best science fiction book that I have ever read, and that is The Three-Body Problem by Zhizhen Liu. He's a Chinese author, and this was translated to English, I think somewhere in 2014 or something, and he won the Hugo Award in 2015 for Best Science Fiction, and I concur. I love reading popular science books and science fiction. I have talked about this in my newbie tag video. If you haven't watched it yet, I will link it in the description. Please go and watch it. But most of the science fiction comes across as very peripheral. It can be called science fiction just because it borrowed an idea and then built a fiction story all about it. Just like, hey, okay, let's write a story about alternate reality. Let's talk about multiverse. And then they get disconnected somewhere along the way. But for me, the three body problem was such a cerebral experience. I mean, if you're not a science major and if you're not familiar with certain physics concept, you might be lost. But the author does take some time to explain it to you. So I listened to this audiobook. So at some point, I just had to stop whatever I was doing and then rewind and listen to it again, because it was kind of getting difficult. And I think that I should have bought the physical copy instead of listening to the audiobook. Also, script was giving me so much trouble while I was listening to this. It took me around 10 days to finish this book. Like, I was just frustrated because I would listen to it like for 10 minutes and script decides to die on me. I was getting so many errors, but somehow I managed to finish it. So script, 0 points for you. Basically, there are two timelines in this story. One is unfolding in the backdrop of the Cultural Revolution in China, and the second is the current timeline. Basically follows the life of certain scientists who are doing some spacey kind of research in China. I don't want to talk much about the plot, and that brings me to my next point, which is that if you haven't read this book and are planning to read this book, because I am gushing over this book so much that you get inspired and you decide to read this book, then please do yourself a favor and do not read or do not research this book anywhere in Google or in Goodreads or anywhere, because I don't know whoever wrote these summaries of this book, somebody from the publisher or I don't know who, but they have given away the plot. They have basically done such a spoiler based summary of the book, and I don't know why they thought that that was a good idea. Lucky for me, this book popped up as a recommendation in my script, which did not have this kind of spoiler. So for me, nothing was spoiled, and I was kept wondering at least till I reached 60% or 70% of the book. And that's when I realized that, oh, so this was what she was researching about. And that's the reveal that the publishers decided to put upfront as a summary of the book. Very poor job. Anyways, this is, like I said, it's a very cerebral experience. There are a lot of scientific concepts that are used, the movement of celestial bodies, nanoscience, a lot of scientific concepts. Also, there is this interesting virtual reality game which you're taken into, and you in your head while you're reading or listening to it, you also play along with the characters this game. It's a very weird and uncanny world that is in this virtual reality game, and you would be wondering what's happening and how this whole time that the author is spending inside the virtual reality game is related to the actual story or the actual plot line of the book. Like I said, when you reach around 60-70% of the book, that's when you connect the game with the actual plot line, what's happening in the Cultural Revolution in China and also in the current China timeline. We have to really appreciate the genius of the author Xi Liu. I'm not at all surprised that he won the Hugo Award for Best Science Fiction that year. He totally deserved it. If you are a science fiction nerd, then go for it. Next up is psychological horror thriller Night of the Mannequin. This story is narrated from first person perspective of a teenage boy. So when you get through to around third or fourth chapter of the book, you realize that he is an extremely disturbed, paranoid teenage boy. He is maybe schizophrenic as well, and he needs help. You realize that up front around 20% into the book. These are a bunch of teenagers. He and his friends were playing in the river, and they come across a mannequin which was discarded by somebody, and they pick it up and wash it up and then play it with it when they were children. This happens when they were children, and now they are a little bit grown up and they're in the late teens, I think, and for whatever reason he feels that they have done the mannequin something wrong by ignoring him and don't play with him anymore, and then from there the story unfolds. At some point you will feel that some things are a little bit unbelievable. How are the people around so ignorant and oblivious to whatever is happening to this kid and whatever this kid is doing? How can he get away with so many things? If you're a fan of horror, you might like it. I personally do not like horror. I think the entire universe, I'm the only one who is not a Stephen King fan, because, guys, I have really tried reading his books, but I don't know, somehow I don't like, I don't know. I mean, I even read the Dark Tower, 3 books of Dark Tower. I really enjoyed it. But again, some point it was quite dragging, I felt. If you like Stephen King-ish novel and horror novels, then go for it. Yeah, so you see me smiling ear to ear, and that's because I am going to talk about the fantasy trilogy, Shadow and Bone trilogy. You know how much I loved Six of Crow duology by Lee Bardugo. I'm a huge fan of those books, and I'm eagerly waiting for the Shadow and Bone Netflix series, which is going to release on the 23rd. Coming to the books, I think that the trilogy was a tad bit less interesting or likable than the duology. I loved the first book, Shadow and Bone, and the next book, Siege and Storm. I felt that there was not much going on in this book. In the second book, it was just, I felt very gassy. Towards the end, there is some actions happening, and that was good. Altogether, I felt the second book was kind of a drag. The third book I really loved, Ruin and Rising. Really, I think out of all the 3, I loved the third one the most. But again, this is all one single story, which is split into the 3 books. I think this could have been compressed into 2 books and made into a duology. I rated 5 star for Six of Crows duology. I would rate this 4.5. That was my March reading wrap up. If you have any of your favorite books that you want me to read and review, please put that in the comment or send me a DM on Instagram. This is my Instagram handle. Please go there. There are some great bookish contents out there. So that's it. That's the March plus February wrap up. I will be back soon with another bookish content. So until then, this is Angela signing off. Bye.